We can save you money when you bundle home and auto with us.
We'll be back, fellas.
We won't.
Good evening, Michael. Good evening, you guys. Thank you so much. And thanks to you at home for joining us this hour. Really happy to have you here. Do you remember that there was a gigantic oil spill in our country that happened in 2010? It was in the Gulf of Mexico off the Louisiana coast. And it was just apocalyptic. You will remember these images, right? The explosion, the plumes of fire and smoke, just this massive, massive, completely out of control fire on board this drilling rig out there 40 miles off the coast in Louisiana. 11 men died when that rig blew up. And then after it blew up and burned for a solid day, that huge oil rig, that drilling rig, sunk to the bottom of the sea. But that was only the start of the disaster because they couldn't stop the oil spewing out of the well that rig had been drilling. Remember, there was literally a live feed we could all watch from the broken wellhead. You could watch the oil spewing out from this hole in the seafloor, this hole they had drilled, and then they couldn't handle it. And that oil spewed for 3 months. Millions of barrels of oil spewed out of that well and into the sea. And they just had no plan for how to stop it. You might remember they tried something called junk shots, which sounds dirty, and it was, but different than how you're thinking about it. The junk shot was where they literally shot junk into the top of the well to try to clog it up with anything they could find. They used, I'm not kidding, golf balls and pieces of plastic and pieces of old tires and knotted up hunks of rope. They just flung them at the spewing oil well, thinking that might stop it, when nobody could believe that this was the big idea, that this was the level of technological prowess the most profitable industry on earth was bringing to bear on this ongoing disaster they had caused and couldn't stop. When people were like, seriously, golf balls is your idea? Torn up bits of tire? The company then changed the language they were using to talk about their efforts to stop the spewing oil well. They stopped talking so much about the junk shots. They instead started insisting they would do something they called a top kill, which sounds way cooler, way more technologically advanced, way less desperate and random than a junk shot. But it was still the same result. Still the same kind of strategy that, like, you know, the characters from South Park might dream up to try to stop an oil spill. But the junk shots and the top kills did not work. They tried a whole bunch of times. It did not work. Then they decided they would just dump tons of chemicals in the water. They wouldn't say what the chemicals were. They called them dispersants, though, and the idea was that they would just dump these mystery chemicals into the ocean in huge amounts, these dispersants, and hopefully that would make the oil disperse. Go away, oil, disperse. And that didn't much work either. It was just disgusting and toxic. And it wreaked havoc on not just everything in the ocean, but in the whole fishery and those coastal Louisiana towns and that whole region of southeast Louisiana and Barataria Bay. I remember reporting down there in 2010 and being nauseous from breathing the sea breeze, which is a thing that will mess up your head both in the moment when it happens and for a very long time after. That disaster happened, as I said, in 2010. That was the worst oil spill disaster in U.S. history. There was supposed to be a blowout preventer to prevent this underwater blowout. Turns out the blowout preventer did not work to prevent blowouts. There was supposed to be a bulletproof, foolproof, multiple redundancies, comprehensive emergency plan in case of any type of accident. But the emergency plan was ridiculous. This was, again, in the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Louisiana. But the emergency response plan specifically for a spill at that site called for rescuing the walruses. Okay, walruses live on sea ice, like polar bears. There are no walruses in Louisiana, but nevertheless, that was part of their emergency response plan that was supposedly specifically designed for this location. You might also remember that